All right, everybody, good morning or good afternoon, as the case may be. It is at 11 o'clock by my watch in Chicago, so it's time to begin. Thank you for attending this PowerCast in-depth exploration of the IFS and IBMI by Tom Huntington and Carl Snolting of Help Systems. This PowerCast is sponsored by Help Systems. My name is Ian Cartwright. I'm Education Manager for Common, and if you experience any technical issues during the presentation, go ahead and send me a message through chat. If you'd like to send a written question to Tom or Carlos during the presentation, use the Q&A area, and they will answer your questions at the end of the presentation as time permits. Presenting today are Tom Huntington and Carl Snolting. Tom is Executive Vice President of Technical Solutions at Help Systems and has been named an IBM champion for the last 6 years. He oversees business alliances and large customer relationships and ensures that Help Systems software works with other major software and hardware vendors worldwide. Carlos started his career as an AS400 RPG applications programmer 30 years ago. 30 years later, he still loves IBMI and uses his extensive technical knowledge to share advice on software services and setups that can create a more secure, automated, efficient, and reliable IT based on IBMI systems. With that, I'm just going to hand control over to Tom. Tom, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Ian, and welcome everyone to yet another Common event. Hats off to Common as they bring education to all of us around the globe. And this truly is a global event. My colleague Carlos is over in Barcelona, Spain, joining us, and very excited to be with you on behalf of Help Systems to share our view on the IFS. And we're going to talk about, what is the IFS today? We're going to talk, how do you work with the IFS? We're going to show you what's stored in the IFS or might be stored in the IFS, depending upon your system. Some things to think about from a monitoring perspective, replication standpoint, backup, and security. All important. We only have an hour, got a lot to cover, and we're very excited to be with you again today. And first of all, the IFS is really not new. It was added to what was then OS 400 under the AS 400 era back in V3R1 in 1994. And if I dial back, what was I doing in 1994? It's a lot younger than I am today. I can tell you that much. It would be great to turn back time. But, the IFS, like myself, we've been around for many years. And yet a lot of people don't know about the IFS and what it's all about. And it was integrated into IBMI back in the day for supporting of Unix and Windows and other technologies. And really, it's a directory structure, much like you'll find in Linux or Windows. There are definitely some nuances with it because it contains predefined file systems that work a certain way and a little different than others. But there is one single root directory on IBMI that a lot of people aren't aware of, that even above qsys.lib that we're used to working with the old traditional library structure on IBMI, you do have a root directory above that. And each of these different directories do have some limitations and rules, and we'll try to enlighten you on that if you're unfamiliar with it. And certainly part of what we need to think about is what's using the IFS to begin with. I know at Help Systems, we have applications and software that we ship in the IFS. And of course, many of your different imaging or document management packages take advantage of the IFS, like our web docs type technology would. Open source, we've heard a lot about open source here from IBM, and open source is certainly going to be taken advantage and using the IFS. ISO images for doing installations of operating systems and other PTFs and stuff take advantage of it. The PACE environment, IBM for years back in the day used to always say it's the most POSIX compliant operating system in the world, and being able to support Unix applications. Client access executables certainly are out there, TCP/IP configuration files, things like Tomcat, but then we look at some of the different business applications like Oracle, SAP, of course, the Lotus Notes, Domino, some of those things that have been on the system for many years. There are, Carlos, over to you to talk about the thin file systems.
Yes, good morning, Tom. Great to be here with you. Good morning. Thank you all to have joined us today. Thank you. Yes, this list shows the 10 different file system types that exist in the IFS. The first type is root. It is the standard one, and any other directory that were created directly as a subdirectory of root will also be of standard type. The other 9 system types have different features. All it depends on the name of the subdirectory you have under root. Of course, we have the UNIX environment and the user-defined file system, where you can create your own rules. The QC-sleep directory is a link that allows access to libraries and objects of the native IBMI storage system through the IFS. We have the independent ASP if you are using technologies like PowerTech. There is also the document library, the old QDLS, which there are many customers still using today. It is good to stop using this old technology as it has many limitations. The optical file system, again, an old technology. The iSeries card technology in Power 5 or Power 6 hardware boxes, but those things have been obsoleted over time. The interesting and little known technology for connection, the IFS between 2 IBMI systems through the Q file server 400, sorry. And finally, there is the network file system. Next one, yes, directory and stream files. Yes, something very important to note is that files contained in the IFS are a string of bytes in the same style that we can find in Unix or Windows files. There is no concept of database fields and records. All files within the IFS are a stream of bytes that can contain PDF files, Word document, or Windows executable programs, for instance. In fact, the operating system creates a small header for each file to contain important information about things like the user profile that owns the file, the antivirus scan status, or the page code to use to understand the content of the file. All this information can be accessed with option 8 when you run the word link command. An IFS file can also be linked to another file within the IFS. In this case, it's called symbolic link. It is something like Windows shortcuts. Next.
Yeah, Ian, I think at this time, if you could open up our first polling question, we want to know what are your challenges with the independent file system on IBMI, and you can select multiple things that apply. Thank you, Ian, for bringing that up. So security is one area, cleaning it up. That's a big issue for people. Often we don't know what's stored there. Monitoring its growth and how it's growing, backing it up, and then replicating it. And I mean, backing it up to me, I don't know about you, Carlos, but customers often say, well, I don't use the IFS. Do I really need to back it up or replicate it? What do you think about that?
Yes, this is true. This is true. It's totally true. Yes.
Yeah, we hear that. We hear that quite often from our customers as we talk to them. So how are we doing, Ian? Is it ready to show the results there? Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Right on cue. Cleaning it up. Okay. I always say it's kind of like the challenge we've gone through COVID. I bet you everybody's cleaned a garage or cleaned a storage room. Maybe it's time to clean the IFS up. That was the #1 getter. Then we had monitoring its growth after that. 64% security. Certainly, the bad actors of the world have just only gotten more active here during the period of time of COVID. And of course, then backing it up and then replicating, a little less concern about replicating it. Awesome. Well, thank you for answering that polling question. Let's move on and get into how do you work with it? Okay. So first of all, Carlos already talked about being able to work with it through the various link command. It's kind of goofy, but one of the commands out there that exists on your IBMI system is work link. So from a green screen, you can type in WRKLNK with a / and see basically the root directory on the system. It's very similar to doing C:/ on your Windows desktop. And once you're on the IBMI system, you can make directories, you can change directories, you can remove directories, basically delete them, copy subdirectories, remove a symbolic link with the delete function to not reference a particular area. But the work link is basically an IBMI command. You're not going to find that on your PC or your Linux environment. You're going to see something more like dir in those environments. IBM, provides APIs for this area too. We'll talk about some of the SQL services later on too that are available to work with it. But of course, we can't say enough. There's certainly documentation out there, and obviously this is a very popular topic for the common group because we see a lot of questions in regards to it. So as we look at root, uppercase and lowercase object names are maintained, but no distinction. So in other words, if I have a directory of Tom, it'll be the same if I do uppercase Tom or lowercase Tom. Each path name within here, 255 characters. You can have some extremely long path names if you're, I guess I almost say unfortunate, but if you have 16 megabyte path names, if you want, basically all the other file systems on the system are going to branch off of the root. So here we are. If we go on to the next slide, we can do this command WRKLNK, WRKLNK / and then that's going to get you to the root directory, and the / is what you use. So this gives you the ability to get in and notice the various directories that we have out there. You'll see UNIX directories out there. You'll see vendors like Help Systems has directories out there. You will see the QDLS directory system out there, and that is the old QDoc system. And I can't emphasize enough, if your team is still, or your staff is still using that, you should really get rid of it because you can't replicate it real time. It's you have to do a save doc to back it up. It doesn't perform as well, and there's a lot of other reasons that you don't want to be using QDLS, or QDoc is what the old name, or PC support folder system, I guess, is maybe probably another way, if I remember right. And then we have Q file server out here, 400. And what that's allowing us to do is basically load up the directory system on another IBMI system by referencing Q file server, and you can connect up between IBMI systems to share IFS directories that way. The next page is the IBM Access Client Solutions, or Navigator for I. Today, and I'm going to talk about the new IBM Navigator here in just a bit. This is how you would look at the IFS from the graphical interface that IBM provides, IBM Access Client Solutions. As we probably have all heard in the media, that this is going away, and IBM doesn't, I don't want to say want to support it, but basically the technology behind it is becoming obsolete. That's probably the best way of looking at it. And so the new the IBM Navigator for I was announced in 2021 in September, delivered basically in September. Today, it does have limited support for IFS. There are things from a security perspective that you can see, but you can't see your whole structure in there. I have been told by some good sources that there'll be more coming in this area, and I clearly expect that because of the fact that the older version is being obsoleted over time. So that's something you'll want to check with IBM on if you're still using it. There will become a point in time where it's basically unsupported technology. And by the way, if you haven't tried the IBM Navigator for I, the new version, it does, I'll say, fly. It performs quite well, and very excited about that. All right, so what's stored in the IFS? Okay, so first of all, qsys.lib structure can be accessed this way. However, for the most part, I don't recommend using this this way. You have to, in some cases, like with the save commands, use qsys.lib, but most of us would probably address by doing an add library list or edit library list or one of those things to add your traditional library. But basically, as you can see, you can access it and reference objects in qsys.lib by using this structure of WRKLNK to get at it. So here we are. A screen example of that is if I put a 5 here, it's going to show me all the other libraries that are underneath it. So for instance, maybe I want to copy a file from the library system into the IFS, I can use this structure as we see in the next slide here to be able to address. So in other words, here in this case, I'm looking at the structure called qsys.lib, and then the underlining library itself, helpsys.lib. And inside of that, I have some physical files, and that's how I would address them using this type of syntax on the system. Again, most of us who are writing RPG applications, SQL applications, etc., are generally going to reference things by adding library lists to or editing the library list to get at this. As we move down the list, we have QDLS, or the document library system. Again, this has been around for a long time. It was well available before V3R1. It was the old IBM Office Vision, and I'm sure hoping nobody's using that anymore, but there might be some people out there. You know, object names are automatically converted to uppercase. You know, DLO and IFS commands can be used against it. If you're going to back it up, though, you're going to do save DLO. If you're going to, you can't replicate it really in real time. You can save it and send it, but you can't really replicate it. And there's, you know, naming conventions, limitations, 8 characters, and you can't journal it, as I said earlier. So lots of limitations when it comes to QDoc. And then we get into the Unix part of the operating system and being able to have open standard POSIX support in here. This supports uppercase and lowercase naming. There's really no limit to the depth of the directory hierarchy, meaning you can continue to go lower into the directory structure as you do. You can have very large directory names. They are not case sensitive. So as we see, QOpenSys equals QOpenSys equals QOpenSys, basically. But the content of the directory is case sensitive. So the other nice thing about this area is that I can journal it. So I can do local and remote journaling of the objects as they're added into the directory system so that I can replicate them or at least track what's changing if I need it to be audited. All right. Moving along, we also have QOpenSys work link here. So what I've done here is just drilled in further, and we can see that we have 2 examples here of the address, for example, is in lowercase and uppercase, and those are 2 different file names. So again, as you go into these various file systems, you have to worry about uppercase, lowercase, and how it's being used within the IFS area of IBMI. And they're meant to be the same you would see in the Unix or Linux world. So long directory and file names are supported also. If you do see something like this, there is a command key to be able to expand that by doing F22 to just go dive further into it. And so here we are showing you on this display here, just the fact that, you know, I did F22 and now I can see the entire object link here to give us a flavor for that. Okay, then we have the Q file server .400, and this was meant to provide IBMI to IBMI directory visibility. It does require a certain subsystem to be active called Q server, and then you will be talking through that. The authentication's done through typical user profile password type functions, but you know, IBMI connections, if not used, are dropped. So the system will maintain like an active connection for a couple of hours about, I don't know exact number on that, but it will stay connected and then drop after a while. So you can have some directory names similar, and they must be recreated basically and reattached after you IPL your system. Again, another thing, you can journal this in real time too, although I'm not so sure I'd be doing that. So here we are, basically to activate another IBMI system, we would do a make directory of Q file serve .400/ this is the name of the system. In this case here, our system happens to be called Robot U. And now from our system called ITEACH, I can connect to the Robot U server And now when I do work link against that, I'm going to be seeing the directory system over on my robot use system versus from the ITEACH system. So again, it's a way that you can address directories across IBMI systems. So the next thing we have is user-defined file systems. And this is what most of us are doing, but basically we can create our own directories and we can load our own data up in this area and using commands like create UDFS and display UDFS, and we can mount these and unmount them. Very easy for you to do. This area too is also going to be journaled in real time. So, we didn't cover some of the other directory systems that are obsolete. I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on, optical kind of things, because hopefully most of you aren't doing it. I know one of the concerns was cleaning up the system, managing the system. There are many different tools out there. We do have a product, Robot Space, I find that's very popular in this particular area of IFS cleanup. It does do more than just IFS. It monitors libraries and temporary storage and spool files and items like that. But it's a tool that was built around it. One of the thoughts that I have on this tool is more of a service and something that our team could provide for you for a service. So let me bring up my file share here. So hopefully you're seeing this other system here. I'm connected to a system. One of the things I'm doing is storage collections. And if I drill into this, one of the rules is IFS directory collection. And as I gather all the IFS directories on my system, we automatically exclude some things like QIBM data. I'm not showing that at this point. I certainly could, but anyways, the / says get everything else. And then we're categorizing a few other things here, but that's great. So that runs periodically on the system. The important thing is we have these collections, and these collections, if you can see these dates, I know it's a little bit small, like February 8th, that collection ran. Here's February 6th and January 1st, January 9th rather. So we create these buckets. So some things you'll see here is, I guess I'm not seeing any new IFS directories, which is kind of unusual, but I can drill into my IFS directories and I can see what's the largest directory on the system. And then I also have capability of drilling in, and I can also do things like, hey, what directory grew the most since the last time we collected it? But then I also can do, this is going to be rather quick, I can also look at IFS files. So one of the challenges is, what's the largest file on your system in the IFS? This is regardless of directory, it's my colleague Chuck's AES file that he's encrypted. Now I also have a filtering feature where I can build filters. And I think we all heard a lot about log4j here just recently. So how do you find all the instances of log4j in the IFS? Well, I collect everything, and now here's my list of all the areas that log4j exists, and I could actually generate a report of this. I could copy this to my clipboard, put it in my spreadsheet. I might decide to drill a little further into these and look at, what's the attributes here, what directory does this exist in? We can see the path for this object. So that's one thing you might look for in the IFS. Maybe you want to know all the save files that are out in the IFS, or maybe you just want to know all the zip files, anything with zip. So basically, really quick way of being able to look through all that. Now, another thing we can do up here is I can come up here and say, I want to compare about a month's worth of data. And so I can say libraries, objects, files, or let's just say IFS directory. What IFS directory over the last month or so has grown the most? And we can just use that option here. And now I can see the directory that has grown the most on the system. So just another tool out there. There's also in this product, there's also some audits. One of the things we can do is we can age IFS directories using a product like this. Okay. Let's go back to the PowerPoint here. And I think, all right, here we go. So that was our live demo. Let's talk about how you monitor the IFS. And I know my colleague Carlos, you've been hanging out there quiet.
Yes,
and here's an opportunity for you.
Thank you very much, Tom. Yes, obviously we can use access clean solution to work with the IFS, but obviously we can do a lot of things from the green screen. There are commands to create directories, new directories, sorry, rename and delete them. There are commands to list directories, contents, and create symbolic links to other files. There are commands that allow us to copy the information from a physical file to a stream file, and the same in the opposite side direction if we need it. We also have commands to do a check-in and check-out. This way, for instance, we can temporarily protect certain files and directories so that nobody can modify them while we work on some directory. This is a very interesting feature. And of course, we have commands to save and restore directory contents, as well as commands that allow us to define user profile authorization and directory and files authorization. Next slides. Yes. Okay, make directory. Obviously, one of the first things we will want to do is to create a directory to contain some of our files. The md command allows you to create a directory and at the same time set the user authorization, audit settings, and the type of antivirus scanning you want to perform on these files on this directory. Sorry. As I have previously commented, by creating a new directory in the root, you are creating a standard IFS type directory. And on the other hand, for instance, if you create a directory within the file server 400, as Tom shows later before, you can connect to another IBMI systems. Next, yes, change directory. The operating system provides 3 commands to know what is current directory for the job, another command to retrieve from a CL program the name of the current directory, and a command to change current directory of the active job. The concept is like the current library, but applied to some directory within the IFS. Sorry. Next one. Work link. Yes. The typical command we use to check the content of directory is the equivalent of the well-known word object command, but applied obviously for the IFS. The execution of this command will show us the content of directory that we define in the first parameter, and from the screen that will appear, we will see and perform different actions on directories and files, as Tom showed previously. Sorry. There are copy commands. The copy and move commands allows us to perform what their name suggests, obviously, copy and move directories and files within the IFS. We also have some interesting commands to allow us to perform different types of file format conversion. The 4 commands shown in the slides contain multiple parameters to perform all kinds of file format conversions between the native format understood by the IBMI and the format that other platforms like Windows normally works with. This example, for instance, with this command and parameters, we can convert the records of a physical file located in the CHGAUT library, copying all member data to a stream file using the ASCII code page. Later, this file can be opened from a PC through the shared folders and use the information created in the IBMI. And if you want, you can even use the native IBMI command to send an email attaching this file, which of course can be later opened by any email reader like Outlook. It's a very interesting option, this one. Yes, a new feature in 7.3. In this slide, we can see the functions that we can call from the SQL sentence to be able to interact with the IFS system files. Sorry. For instance, we have the IFS write function that allows us to write a byte string directly to an existing file or create it in the case it did not exist previously. As we can see in this table, all these functions were at with some PTF level applied to the operating system, and all are available from version 7.3 of the operating system.
And I'd say we don't have time to go through every one of these SQL examples out there, but IBM has done a great job of providing those SQL services for people to use.
Yes. If you have an CL program, you need to first convert some with a command, convert some file, and then do something with this SQL sentence. Is very easy to do. Yes.
So that's how we access some of the things there. How do we replicate or back up the IFS area is also important. My background's being backup and recovery and replication. To me, it's always a little concerning when somebody says, "Oh, we don't use the IFS," and I don't know many IBM systems that are not using some of the IFS because of all the different applications these days that we're running. We're using the IFS more and more. And so knowledge of this area is important for backups and for high availability. Now, in the backup area, you're going to use the SAV command, not to be confused with save lib or save storage or save DLO. There's a command called SAV and a command called RST, and those are what used to back up your directories. If you do save option 21 from the save menu or a full save with a BRMS or robot save type product, you are going to be getting an SAV. They do build that into that process, and it is part of it. But you might only be getting that once a quarter, once a month, depending upon when you do full systems on your full system saves. So the whole IFS directory can be complex for the operations team, but this is basically how you use SAV. So SAV, we're going to have a tape device, and I'm just going to call it tape 01 to be simple. And I want to use that device, and I want to back up to the device description, and it's stored in qsys.lib because that's where all your configuration objects, all your printers, all your user devices, all those things are stored in qsys.lib. So if I'm going to use the SAV command and reference a tape device or a virtual tape library or whatever that I'm emulating, I have to point it to that device description. Same would be as if I'm going to use a save file, I would say qsys.lib. Let's say the save file's in QGPL. I would do QGPL.lib, and then I'd do / what's the name of my save file? Maybe it's Tom save file, and that's how I would access that. So here's an example then. On the command, typically, if we're going to be backing up everything in the IFS except for qsys.lib and QDLS, this is the command that you would use. It's going to say, let's back up all the directories on the system, let's include them, and let's omit qsys.lib because we don't want to back that up. That's your traditional library file system that you back up with save lib type commands or save change object. And then QDLS is backed up with the save DLO command. And so consequently, you wouldn't back that up either with SAV. So we'd omit those two as we do the backups. So the other aspect that a lot of people don't realize is that you can journal the IFS, everything but QDoc, okay? Reminder, right here, you can't do QDoc. So to do that, there are commands called start journal, end journal, and this journaling works with remote journaling. So if you're using a high availability product today, it should be able to do real-time replication of your IFS information. And again, just like other journals for physical files, you're going to create journal receivers and create a journal where this information is going through, and that's going to be stored in the qsys.lib structure. Kind of like when it comes to saves, you're kind of crossing boundaries between your traditional library structure on IBM and same would be with journaling. You got to put your journals, your journal receivers into the traditional area of IBM, but then you're replicating or you're journaling the IFS directory in question here. So we make this real easy in our product like Robot HA. And Carlos, what does Robot HA do for customers?
Yes, obviously it's important to perform daily backups, and we do with libraries and physical files. However, if you want to go a step forward, we can implement a real-time IFS replication using journals and some software that applies the change that happen in production to the high availability system. And this is just Robot HA is the solution we have and offer to our customers to replicate in real time everything that is stored in the IMI. For example, the files that are in the IFS. This product has a lot of nice features, and obviously one of these features is replicate the IFS. Tom, I think you can show us a quick demo of Robot HA replication related to the IFS, right?
Exactly. I'll do that for you. Yeah.
Perfect.
Let's move ahead here on that and just show you a couple different things on this. So let me get out of the PowerPoint and bring back our remote desktop. So you should be able to see that right now. So
yes.
Let me go, what I'm going to do, well, actually, let me just show you the impact of this. So if we do F21 here and do look at a directory. So there's work link command. And if I do option 5 on it, now I can see the content, and we have some stream files in here. We have subdirectories. We have some more stream files. And over on my target system, actually I should do F9 because I think I have that all built in. We have the same set of directories. Now, so if I'm in replication mode, we'll see I have a file up here called A backups, and I have it over here. If I take option 4 here and delete it, and if all is good, it goes away. So let me do something else. Let me replicate this one, 714 PDF. I'm gonna prompt, I'm gonna actually make a bad mistake there. Bad demo guy, as I say. I'm gonna do F4 here, and I'm gonna give this a name of backups, and I'll just show you that underscore 713.pdf and see if that works here. Object copied, and oh, where did it go? Did I type that wrong, Carlos?
Maybe copy it to the root. Because
yeah, I might have, yeah, I think I put the wrong directory name on there.
You can rename one of these.
Okay, let me do that. Thank you. That's a good tip. So
yeah.
Let's just rename this one. It'd be home/Tom H/backups underscore 713.pdf. We'll go that route. Okay. Oh.
Last slash.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. I think I can just do backups. See, it's one of those things. I don't do this every day. So this is a live demo. Let's go this way. I believe that should work. Yes, there we go. Okay, I think that's what I did wrong on the other one too. So now we see it right here, and then it's being replicated real time over here. So that's kind of cool. How did that happen? All right, so if we go into our product here, I'll go full screen on this, make that a little easier. Everybody's going, oh my God, thank you so much, Tom. I can now see your screen. I do F11 here. I come down. Here's my directory that I've been replicating. And what's nice is that I can do a work journal attributes. Now, this is just a general IBMI command. And if I do F19 here, I can see what's journaled. So I can see IFS directories, and these are all the different IFS directories that are being journaled here, or objects, I should say, that are being journaled. So as I change those, they'll get automatically replicated. Now, if I do, I can also do F16 here. And now what this is showing me that I'm actually talking to a remote journal. And so what's happening as I'm making those changes to my IFS directory, they're flowing through the system and going over to the target partition. Anything else I should show them there, Carlos, or what do you think?
I think it's enough to understand how this works. Yes, it's very easy to set up and to reply the changes to the remote box. Yes, it's very easy.
Yeah, and so we'll see in here, these are journal. This is journal receiver images, and as things are updated and changed. They come through these entries here, and this is the entries that I just did. You know, if you can read that, you can figure out what got replicated, but I can't. Of course, you can go hexadecimal on it if you want.
Yeah.
All fun stuff. So, all right. So let's continue on today. That's a little bit on that. How about security? We can't forget about security. Basically, use directory authority same way you use library authority to a certain extent, but there's, you know, it's a different set of commands again, and different, you know, we're probably used to grant object authority, edit object authority, commands like that. It's different once we get in here. It does use OS 400 security for the OS 400 directories, but then Unix and PC type security in other areas. You do require SecAdmin authority to use this, and IFS authority is it's referred more to as privileges. My colleague Robin Tatum, I know, has done whole presentations just on directory security on IBM I. So, you know, this is a smattering of a lot of different topics related to IFS. We can't cover everything for everybody here today, but hopefully get you started. So in the IFS area, the commands you're going to want to be dealing with is display authority, work authority, change authority, change owner. And these again kind of equate to display object authority, edit object authority, grant object authority, change object owner, but now you're dealing with IFS. So those are the IBM I based commands. Now there are also another if you're used to Unix authority or Linux authority type commands, they do exist within basically the Q shell area of the system. So if you're going to use work link, like we just showed you, to look at your authority, you can take option 9 to work with the authority of any of the objects, stream files, directories that are stored within the system. And then what happens is you get a change authority prompt, basically, and you can have data authority and object authority, very similar again to Unix and Linux, and that you have. There is a twist to that because you can use authorization lists, which is an IBM I type functionality, and that gives you the ability to use those on your IFS area too if you want. We also can exclude, and you know, this is where we get into it's one of the biggest dangers we see in IFS security is that you do have this root directory, and what the big fear there is, if you give public access to root directory, that is a big no-no. And you potentially, that's how ransomware can happen on IBM I. If somebody on a Windows server has IBM I in their directory system and they execute a ransomware, it'll actually encrypt IBM I disk storage too. So this is public is a I guess #1 enemy of the root access on IBM I. So I'd be very, very concerned about that. So, you know, speaking of ransomware, antivirus, things like that, you know, the goodness with IFS is it is very flexible. The downside is that you can actually store objects with viruses, right, Carlos?
Yes, this is a big problem. It's something that we don't need to forget. Protect the IFS. This is very important. The IFS is very powerful, but we now in the 2022 we need to think about protect the IFS so that it cannot contain any type of virus, and at the same time prevent an external ransomware attack from encrypting your entire IFS and then asking for a ransomware in Bitcoins. Since last month, and to avoid this problem, our Powertech Antivirus not only includes IFS virus protection, but a real-time shields that monitor ransomware actions being performed on the net server. This new version of our antivirus immediately detects and stop any attempt to encrypt files from the process running outside the system, probably from a PC connected to the same network as the IBM I. It's very important to think about this new feature we introduced last month. Is very, very important and something about to protect and prevent encryption from the outside. Yes, it's important.
So what we do is we run natively on IBMI, AIX, Linux, and we go out, get the DAT files from our relationship with McAfee, and then we do scanning of the operating system. And IBMI, the operating system doesn't get viruses, but the IFS maintains them or stores them, or God, what's another way of looking at it is basically it's a holder of potentially viruses on your system. And unfortunately, we do see them out there. And when we do scans, it won't be, you could probably say it's not as big of a risk as your Windows server, but if ransomware does run against IBMI, you have more to lose than you do on one Windows server, right? I mean, because it's our core business application.
Yeah, it's important.
How about security scans, Carlos? That's something we do too for customers. They're free. My colleagues, Sandy, Carlos, Robin, Phil, and others around the globe here at Help Systems, they probably are scanning 1 or 2 IBMI systems a day to help them better understand their security. And one of the things we do look at is root authority. We have found many a times where Star Public has all authority to the root file system on IBMI, and that is just what do you want to call it? An accident waiting to happen. So I would be very, very concerned about that. All right, Ian, we're almost ready for the question and answer part of today's webinar, but we have one last polling question here. I know you're going to load that up in case somebody would like to contact us. We'll leave that open. How would you like us to follow up with you? I showed you Robot Space today, a demo on that. We talked about antivirus. We talked about HA replication. We talked about backups. Certainly we can talk to you about that. Free security scan, or maybe you want a health check on any of the help system software. We always do that too for customers. And you've been a great group of people here. We'll leave that polling question up. In summary, we talked about a lot today. We can only just go so far. I know there's a lot of IFS discussions and sessions that'll be at Common. I want a shameful plug for Common. Common Spring will be in New Orleans in like May 21st, somewhere around there for 4 days. I will be there. I'm looking forward to seeing you all there at the Common Conference. It's been a while since we've had any face-to-face interaction, and looking forward to that area. And certainly we can dive a little further into manipulating, monitoring, backing up, journaling, and securing your IFS. And I know we've had a ton of questions out there, Ian. So
yeah, we do. And if folks, hey, while I'm talking, Tom, if you want to open up the Q&A yourself and sort of triage questions, which ones you want to answer, you can just read them off verbally and give responses rather than what we were initially planning on doing. I will say that there are a lot of people who asked about the handout and a replay. They will be available. The session is being recorded, and it will be available for tomorrow. Everybody will get an email with a link to the item on the learning management system over at Common. But go ahead and read it.
I think the first question may not, I'm not sure it has to do with the IFS, because the person's saying their computer freezes up and runs out of memory trying to open up a folder, and I'm not sure if they're saying a folder to IBMI or to their desktop. So I'm going to skip over that. Here's more of a comment. We contain XML files. We archive them over 90 days. That's good. That's a nice practice. The IBMI ACS integrated file system is much slower. That is true. The new IBMI Navigator, if you haven't loaded it, I'm going to encourage you to load it, because all the other functions in the browser behave a lot faster, and IBM, hats off to them, have done a great job with that. IFS is not fully functional in there yet. It is coming. How would you create an ODBC connection to the IFS? I will have to defer. Have you done that, Carlos, or not? I have not done that.
Only my experience is only to physical files, not to the IFS. The IFS you can access directly with shared folders.
Yeah, right. And then another question: can I use QFile server to communicate from LPAR to LPAR? Absolutely. It's really, even though I said from one 400 or from one IBMI system to another, it's really one LPAR to another LPAR. So one virtual instance of IBMI, certainly. Dan, Tom, you said ACS will go away. Did you really mean to say that? It is the old iNavigator is what's going to go away. So I may have overstated that a little bit. Access Client Solutions is not necessarily going to go away, and the the ODBC drivers and stuff, but the old iNavigator will go away. And IBM doesn't plan to carry that forward. I believe that was announced already, or I might be talking out of turn a little bit on that, but it is going away. And if you hadn't heard that before, you're hearing it here, and absolutely. Why would you have multiple QOpenSys directories? Somebody created them. Somebody created symbolic links. I'm not sure why your system is showing that. That would tell me somebody didn't know what they were doing, which is always possible on systems. And it looks like somebody replicated it over and over on their system. You might be having somebody who's been accessing IBMI from Q shell. I'm guessing. So I would absolutely take a look at that a little bit deeper, because you shouldn't have multiple QOpenSys directories. Somebody's done that to your system. They've created that. Is Robot U a licensed product you are selling to manage IFS? Conrad or Carlos, the answer there is no, right? Robot U, it's just an example. Robot U is a system name, an IBMI system name, just like you saw ITEACH in there. Today I use a system called Wisdom and Academy quite a bit. You might see those. Those are just system names. So that's not a product. It was just an example of a system. Robot Space would be the better option for managing the IFS. Check in and check out. I don't know that I have enough time to show that, but basically I believe that if I remember right, when I do that, it gives you a lock on the actual object in there, so nobody else can actually open up that object. So it's kind of, kind of a Carlos, have you used that lately?
Yes. The checkout and check-in is a temporary change of the authorization to these files and directories, but it's temporary. It's something that the operating system retains and remembers, and when you do a check-in, then it's restored to the previous authorization in these files and directories.
Yeah, and I would consider to be similar to like an allocate object, kind of from the.
Yes,
where can information?
Yes.
Where can information of these SQL functions be found? Do you have a web page? We do. I just, the easiest thing is
on IBMI website of the IBMI.
Just go to Google. Go to Google and say Google SQL Services IBMI, and you will find a lot, and you'll just have to work your way into the IFS SQL, right?
Yes.
Carlos?
You can also go to the Common Learning Management System. And Scott and Tim have been doing a series on those for a while. It's called IC. It's at the top of the page.
It's not something new. IBM, I'll just say back to 7.2 is probably where SQL Services became a bit more, which takes you back really 9 years, 10 years ago, became more prevalent in the market. They existed already, but IBM's put a lot of effort into that area. Do you have a proposal for using Robot HA in the cloud? Not off the top of my head, but certainly that is something you can do. And more customers in general, one of the things they're looking to do is on-premise replication to cloud. And certainly Robot HA could do that for you, as really any of the replication products could do. And very good. How can I tell if the IFS root allows star public access? Very easily, you do work link and / and you'll be seeing your root directory at that point in time. And then you do that option 9 to see what authorities are on your root directory on your IBMI system. I think that's probably the easiest way for that. Okay, if Starplay is excluded for root, you'll break your, yeah, you do. That's a great point, Ron. Ron's saying, hey, don't just do star exclude because then nobody will be able to access the system. Yeah, read access is what you want to have. Yeah, okay. If you're using Powertech exit points, do you need to worry about it? No, you can use that and it will reject the authorization. Yeah, okay. And a couple other follow-ons. I appreciate that. You know, sometimes as we're presenting, we say things that are a little bit off. So completely revoking public from the root is not what I meant to say. You do need to have read authority. Let's see. Wow, we got a lot of questions here, Ian.
Yeah.
How are we doing on time? I'm looking at my time here. Okay, a couple more
about
minutes.
5 more minutes, but handle what you can. We can do a follow-up. We can do some emails afterwards. We can do another IFS webinar further on. We don't have to stop here.
Yeah, and somebody's asking about iNavigator working with Windows 7. Off the top of my head, I don't know the status of the old. It's going to be, you know, the old iNavigator is going to be more related to what OS level you're at, whether you're at OS level 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, and whatever next. And you do know there's a new OS coming this spring. Let's see, if I create a share for an IFS directory, if I create a share with the IFS directory through an iNavigator, but have user-specific authorities, which will prevail? Well, the authority at the directory level is what's going to prevail, and you can set that up many different ways. One of the ways is through iNavigator. The other would be through the commands that we showed you today. Okay. What would be the consequences of IBM getting encrypted? Well, that would be devastating if you're running things like WebSphere and what else is under IBM. Off the top of my head, I don't know all the different applications under, but if that was encrypted, you would basically your web services and many other things. I'm not even sure. I think Lotus Notes might be installed in there if you're running that. There's just a variety of things that go under IBM. Okay. Yeah, Ian, that's probably enough for today. People asking for the presentation. That's pretty common. And then will we get a copy of the chat and then we can answer out through you, or how do you want to handle that?
Yeah, we can. You can answer through me. We could post it on the learning management side. We can post it as sort of responses to the original video. Might be the way to do it. So
yeah, okay, and that might take
a bit of time,
a week or so. Tom, yours truly is going on vacation shortly after this for a little bit. So, anyways, so I'll see what I can do here. Thank you so much on behalf of Help Systems. I really appreciate the large attendance today, all the questions that you all had, and may our path here in the near future at Common in New Orleans.
All right, great. Thanks, everybody. Like I said, the handout and replay will be available. I'll send out an email to everybody. I'll also try to send out an email if there are additional questions that are answered on that learning management system page in the future. So watch the space. Thank you for your attending, and thank you, Carlos and Tom.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tom. It's a great pleasure to be with you today, and thank you, Ian.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.